Hello, everyone. It's been a while, a hot minute since I have been doing my 1 o'clock lives, and I'm so excited to finally have some good stuff for you. And my friend Dora, who's a vegan, plant-based Mexican food creator. So she was a blogger back in the day, and now she does lots of good Instagram stuff and YouTube. And she has a brand new book that's fabulous. I've been looking through it. It's just amazing. And the photos are beautiful. Your recipes are always so delicious and flavorful. And you guys look down below in the description and it shows where to follow Dora. It also shows there's a link to go get the book because after you see this recipe, you're going to want the book too. And Dora, I'm going to let you go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and maybe talk about your background and what led you to making this wonderful book.
Hello, everybody. I am so happy.
Maybe talk about your background and what led you to this wonderful book.
Hello, everybody. I am so happy. Remember my tamales ebook. But I started doing vegan food around 10 years ago. I've been vegan for 10 years, and I started doing it for health reasons. I was going through a health issue, and the doctors just couldn't. I mean, they were kind of treating the symptoms, but nobody was getting to the root of the problem, and I was in so much pain. And I had a friend who we were living in California at the time, and she was like, "You have to watch this documentary. It's called Forks Over Knives." And I didn't want to. I did not want to because I knew that if I did, that I was gonna want to try it, and I wasn't ready to give up my cheese. But eventually, I did do it, and I've been vegan ever since. And during that journey into veganism, my mother was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And so I was born in Mexico. My mother is Mexican, and I was trying to get her to eat healthier, to eat more plants. And I was trying to give her all these new vegan dishes that I was making, and she was just not having it. Till this day, she refuses to try tofu ever again because she tried it once, and I don't think I knew how to prepare it yet. And she was like, "No, never feed me tofu ever again." And it was her that told me, like, why can't you just make this Mexican? And that, like, opened my mind to all the possibilities. Of course, like, what am I doing trying to make other dishes? Like, I need to make vegan Mexican food, and that is what I have been doing ever since.
And you do it amazingly well. Like, I love Mexican food and I love exploring things. You and I, over the pandemic, I'm trying to, what was it? There was the audio channel. I don't know. I can't believe I can't even remember. We used to talk a lot about have these vegan conversations and things, and like getting to like really start using chiles and different things like that. And please, everyone, forgive my mispronunciation. I even mispronounce. Look at that. So see, it's true. I can't pronounce in any language, but it's just such an interesting thing, and it's simple yet fantastically amazing and world changing when you add some of those. Like, Dora moved her screen down for where she's going to cook, so I saw that we've got that coming, and I'm not super surprised. And what's so amazing is that maybe 20 years ago, it was a little harder unless you went to a Hispanic market, which where I live, we have a wonderful like chain Hispanic market that I can get everything at. But you can get chiles at Walmart, right? So there's no excuse. It's not anything that's strange or odd, and it's just beautiful. It's going to change. I feel like it's going to change your food life. So I know that you do wonderful things. I just feel so passionate about a lot of the different flavors, like Indian cuisine, Mexican cuisine. And it takes things like tofu, right? That we all had bad one time or another, and it turns it into something just otherworldly. which is amazing. And I know you said you were missing cheeses, and I've seen that you've done some great quesos, like queso fresca and different things like that, which is amazing too. Leanne Long says Mexican and Asian foods lend themselves to being plant based, and so easily, and I agree with that. The What's funny, other than chilies, the most mind blowing experience I had is so basic that you're going to laugh at me, but it's realizing that potatoes can go in a burrito. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's not how Americans typically do it. And once I had that, or like even that mushrooms are used so much. So when we were in Mexico, that's when I was like, what do you mean you can put potatoes in there? What have I been missing my whole life, right? And Mary Ellen says she can't wait to see this recipe. It's going to be brilliant. Summer says Mexican is my favorite. One Anti Venom says, tofu is my favorite. And and it's okay. I think we all had a bad tofu experience in our life. Like for me, a really good friend invited me over and got tofu because she knew I was vegan, and she took it out of the fridge and she sliced it up.
No.
Yeah, yeah. So that's probably the worst. And yes, Leanne Long says, I follow her, Dora's Table, right? And that's your blog. And make sure you're following her on Instagram and YouTube as well. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to be quiet and let you talk about this recipe and make it. And I will ask people's questions as they come along. But I'm super excited.
All right, and feel free to ask any questions. I am all about telling you about Mexican food. I, like Kathy, am so very passionate about it, and I want everybody to learn how to make it. Today we're going to make poisoned tacos, and they're called in español se llaman tacos envenenados. And so the story goes that there was a food vendor that was selling these tacos, and people were kind of labeling him like unhealthy because it has chorizo, it has beans, and they're like, oh no, no, like all this fat and all this is bad for you. And so the food vendor was kind of had a sense of humor. And so he made a sign that said, if you want to get poisoned, eat these tacos. And so these are poisoned tacos, where they're not really poisoned and they're going to be made with really good stuff. So the filling is potatoes, Kathy, potatoes, chorizo, and beans. And so they're meant to be kind of like a crispy taco. And so that's what we're going to do today. They are super easy to make. In the book, I give you options to make everything yourself. So, like if you want to make your own chorizo, there's a recipe for that. If you want to make your own vegan cheese, you can do that. But why I love these tacos so much is that they can be made super quickly and you don't have to make your own chorizo. You can buy store-bought chorizo. You can buy your store-bought vegan cheese. And the potatoes, these you could even make with like leftover mashed potatoes one day. Don't toss them. Make poison tacos the next day. So let's get started. I'm going to turn my screen down so you can see my area. All right. So to start, we're going to start off with working with this is chile guajillo. And so chile guajillo is a very mild dried chile. It's got a very fruity flavor. It's used to flavor things like pozole. It's used to make adobos, which are like seasoning sauces. And so this is what you're gonna very commonly find in grocery stores. It's not a specialty chile, it's a very common chile. And so I'm going to teach you how, when you have dried chiles, I know sometimes it could be intimidating. If you've never worked with dried chiles before, you're like, no, um, a lot of people are more comfortable working with, chili powder, but you will see the difference. I encourage you to give it a try because the flavor difference is so, so big when you use dried chiles. So what I usually do is I use shears. And I'm going to put my little thing right here. And what you want to do is you want to cut off the stem, and most of the seeds are going to just fall out like this. And you take the scissors and you're going to cut it open and take all of the seeds out. Now you want to make sure to take all of the seeds out because if they do end up in your sauce, sometimes they can make the sauce bitter. So you want to take all of the seeds out. And so I'm gonna transfer them to this pot of water that I have right here. And so dried chiles, you also have to make sure that they're clean. Sometimes, depending on where you buy them, they might be very dusty. So I did rinse these a little bit beforehand, or you can also, if you're gonna, I'm not gonna toast them today, but if you were gonna toast them instead of rinsing them, I would have you just kind of wipe them off with a moist paper towel. That way they're not too wet and it'll toast easier.
Dora, do you find that when they're dusty, it's when, because at the Hispanic market I was telling you about, they just kind of
Hmm.
have an open table with all the different chilies in different sections. And I find, is that why dirt or dust often gets on them, or do you find them in the packaged ones as well?
Sometimes that's the most common reason, but sometimes even in the package they're dusty. I think it's just in the production. It's not something you want to do, like to clean your chiles before packaging them because then they would grow mold.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay. So we have our chiles in our pot. Let's see this up a little bit. And I'm going to do a little multitasking because we need to cook the potatoes for the sauce. So I'm going to put them in the same pot. I already have some cup potatoes right here. And this is about a pound of potatoes. It's like one humongous Idaho potato. And so we're just gonna transfer this over here. And we're gonna let this cook around 15 to 20 minutes just so that the potatoes are tender. And the potatoes will be tender and the chiles will be completely soft. And that's what we want to do because we're gonna blend the chiles. So you want the chiles to be soft and flexible. So I'm going to move this to the stove and I'm going to do a little magic of TV cooking.
Love the magic.
Voila, they're done.
Woohoo!
So as you can see here, my potatoes are nice and soft and my chiles are also very soft. I'm going to touch them. Like they're very, very flexible. So the first thing that we're going to do, so the filling has kind of two portions to it. So the first thing we're going to do is blend the chiles with the beans, and the beans are going to be kind of like the sauce to our filling, and then we're going to move on to the chorizo. So I'm going to get my stuff right here. What is your favorite chile to work with, Kathy?
I like and I say guajillo. Is that, say it for me one more time so I can see if I can get better.
Guajillo.
Guajillo.
Yeah,
Gua-
there you
I know I'm still messing it up, but I did give it a good try. I like ancho, not only because they are delicious, but because I can say it without extra help. But I
go.
like them because they're kind of almost, they're a little bit darker, a little more raisiny, umami kind of flavor. That's my favorite.
They're very good in chili, anchos. Okay, so I'm just with a slotted spoon, I'm going to take my three, there's only three, so my three chiles from the pot. Okay. And then I'm going to add 2 cups of pinto beans, and these still have some broth in there.
So if you were
We,
using a can, would you strain them or put the aquafaba in, do you think?
I would drain a little bit of the liquid because I am going to add a little bit of vegetable broth. So you want enough liquid in here so that you get a pretty loose puree because it will thicken when we cook it in the pan. So I'm going to blend. Kathy, I don't know if you want to. mute me so I don't hurt people's ears.
Okay, so I'll mute Dora for just a minute or two until I see it happening. And ooh, I love beans, and I cook a lot of not refried beans. So I basically cook up beans with spices and chilies and puree them. All right, back to you, Dora. Oh, you're blending. It's so quiet. I actually took you off mute, but it's so quiet. Yeah, I think we can leave you on without any problem whatsoever.
All right. So our beans are done, and I'm going to show you the color because it's because of the chiles. The chiles that I got were really nice. They're like very fresh. That's another thing that you have to keep in mind when you're buying dried chiles. If they're very brittle, it means that they're old. So if you can find some, they're still, all of them are dried, so they're not going to be like fresh chiles. But if they're like very brittle and they break very easily, that's a sure sign that they're very old. And then the problem is that they won't, the flavor won't be as intense when you have very old chiles. And
So it's
so,
a little bit like spices or herbs. The older it gets, the more they. So if you had old chilies, all you would need to do is maybe instead of 3, use 5. Would that be a
yes,
good solution? Okay.
yes, yes. So look at this color.
Oh, that's so pretty.
And this is just the beans blended with the chiles. And I'll show you, see if you can see the consistency. So it's pretty liquidy. All right, so we're gonna set that aside.
And Leanne is saying, is that true of all the chilies? And I would assume that if they're brittle, that they're old.
Yes, that's true of all the chiles. Okay, so I'm gonna go drain my potatoes in the sink, and then I'll be right back.
Excellent. I see that some people are saying, yay, potatoes, including me. Penny's favorite chili is Hatch chilies, and that's kind of exciting. And Leanne also bought dried chilies, but never touched them yet. So this is the entryway for you.
Yeah. All right. So I drained my potatoes, and then I'm just going to make mashed potatoes. I'm just gonna mash them. We don't need to add anything to them yet, so just you can use a fork or the potato masher like I'm doing right now. Just give them a quick mash. They don't even have to be, like super mashed. You can leave them chunky. And then we're also going to set this aside for a second. And now we're going to move on to the good stuff.
Excellent. I have that pan.
It's actually, I was gifted it by the brand, and I'm like, I don't think I need another pan. And I'm like, this is a great pan. Okay, so while we wait for it to heat up, I will kind of walk you to what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna make it today without any oil. So traditionally they are made with oil because it's kind of a street food. And so if you've ever been to Mexico, you would know that street food has a ton of oil in it. Everything is kind of like pan fried or like deep fried. So we're gonna make a no oil version today. That's why I'm using a non-stick pan. But if you were gonna use oil, you would cook the chorizo, which I have right here, the chorizo in the oil until it kind of gets a little bit brown. And then we're going to add our potatoes and our beans, and that is going to be the filling for our tacos. Any more questions, Kathy, while we wait for this to heat up?
I can always come up with more questions because I am the question lady. So I have a loose theory, and I wonder what your opinion is on it, is that it seems like a lot of like street food, fast food, food of the peoples of all over the world a lot of times have more fat in it. And I often wonder, this is just me wondering out loud, if it's because there was a time when people who started eating that food were a little bit not rich. We're either struggling financially or the men would be working, because I'm thinking back in the day. I'm not thinking yesterday, right? So decades ago that men were going off into the mines and working 12-hour days. So them having a low-fat, turkey sandwich to carry with them is not the same thing as like having biscuits and gravy or fried tacos or heavy, rich, refried beans with fat in it. Do you know any history from your culture that might add some light, yes or no, on that?
I think for Mexican street food is that the oil helps preserve the tortilla. If you heat up
Oh,
a tortilla on a skillet, especially like a corn tortilla, and you let it, put it at room temperature for a little bit, it's gonna get hard. Almost, I would say almost immediately. That's why you want to make it and eat it. So with street food, if it's fried,
mm-hmm.
if it's fried, it'll maintain the crispiness. And even street tacos, if it's a soft taco, they even pass the tortilla through oil. And so that helps the tortilla
Oh.
stay soft even at room temperature.
Oh, that's great. I'm just always kind of figuring out some things because when we eat plant-based, we eat a lot of basic foods that people have eaten for centuries, right? And so it's always curious to me how we got kind of off track. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I'm always curious about that. The other question, Jackie said, and you're going to know the answer, when I buy soy chorizo, I find it very loose instead of sliceable. Is that always the case? And I know from Spanish chorizo regular versus Mexican chorizo. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So Spanish chorizo is more like a cured meat. So it's hard and you can slice it. Mexican chorizo is kind of like the mestizo version, like the fusion version that happened after the Spanish came to Mexico. So instead of, curing the meat and aging it so that it becomes hard, usually we use just ground pork and season it. But the seasoning of the meat is the same. So that most of commercial soy chorizo is modeling Mexican chorizo. That's why it's more loose.
That's great. And this is a good question too. And what I love about Mexican chorizo though from my side is I can make a sauce. I don't have your book right here because I have it on my e-reader. But you probably have a chorizo recipe in there, at least one. But I love it because then you can make it. If you have tofu, you can kind of squish up some tofu, or I've made it out of rice cauliflower or quinoa. So it's a light flavoring with something loose is so wonderful. And Betsy said she was trying to channel her inner me and add ancho chilies to a pot of beans. This last time, and I added a guajillo pepper, and the beans were way hotter, which was unexpected. I thought both were mild, and I do find most of the time those are mild. I do know that pepper growing conditions in general of any pepper can, if it's stressed, it can be a little hotter. What's your experience of that, Dora?
I would say most of the time they are mild. A good clue though, because like you said, the chile growing conditions might alter that, and then so it might depend on the time of year and the brand that you're using, is that if when you're cutting it, you can like smell it very intensely, that means that it's hotter than it should be. Or if you feel like sometimes you can even feel the sting on your skin and you're like, wait, I don't understand. These are guajillo. So that's a good clue to be like, maybe this isn't as mild as I thought it was.
Oh, I love that because I'm queen of like, I don't know what this pepper is. I'm going to touch it to my tongue and then I just suffer or not. And I'm also like the
Yeah.
little short white lady running around the Hispanic market going, is this one spicier than this one? And people are just like, okay, old lady, you don't get that one. Don't get the spicy one. But 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 I love the idea of touching because there are times I smell it, especially what is it I'm thinking of? Poblano peppers, which are fresh pepper. Those can vary so much. That's because Cheryl can't have any spicy food. When we go to India, and we order baby mild, so it's what they make for small children. So if I give her a poblano that's the least bit spicy, she's going to eat all the potato filling out of it.
Right, so our pan is hot, so I'm gonna go really quick over here. So I have my chorizo right here, and I do have a chorizo recipe in the book, and it's made with tofu, mushrooms, and walnuts. And but like you said,
Mm.
Kathy, it's very easy to substitute for other ingredients because what we're basically do making is an adobo, and an adobo is a chile sauce. So we're making a chile sauce, which is what gives the chorizo flavor. And so you can use that same sauce to season, like you said, cauliflower, quinoa, mashed lentils, like anything that you would consider like a good meat substitute with that sauce, and it would give you that same chorizo flavor.
I love the versatility of all the things that you're doing, but especially this because you could have something left over, right? And maybe I had a couple of teaspoons of lentils. I could just throw them in here as well.
Yes. Okay. So our chorizo, this is store-bought chorizo, so it doesn't really need to cook. It's already cooked. So we just want to make sure that it's warm, and if you want, you could wait until it kind of browns a little bit, but it's not absolutely necessary. And so now we are going to add our mashed potatoes to this, and this is kind of like a carb taco, but it has plenty of protein from the chorizo and the beans that we're going to add into it, so it's the best of both worlds.
It's also really good because a lot of people watching the channel follow Dr. McDougall doing the starch solution. And so
Oh
potatoes
yeah.
are a really integral part, but potatoes with the tofu and then the beans, that's such a great combo.
So here we just want to mix the chorizo with the potatoes. And then we're going to pour in our beans. And so this is why our beans needed to be liquidy, because they're kind of the sauce that's going to hold everything together.
That's so interesting because I haven't actually made anything where it's a bean, kind of a bean sauce or like this. So this is super fascinating. And it looks amazing too already.
And so we're going to mix everything together. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit because we do want it to thicken up. And then here, this is the point where I would add salt and pepper. I like to add my salt at the end. You know, professional chefs add salt as they go. But then what happens is that if you, that's why when you eat out, most of the food is very salty. Like sometimes it's more salty than what you're used to at home. So I like to add the salt kind of at the end, like at this stage right here, so that I can manage it a little bit better. I feel that if I do it throughout the process and then I get too excited and at the end, it's very hard to fix something salty.
I completely agree. And some people are trying to cut down on salt. One of the things that Dr. McDougall says is salt your food before you eat it, but this is also a perfect way to do it. And if you're eating less salt maybe than other people in your household, you can always have a salt shaker on the table.
And this is my really cool electric pepper grinder.
I love the light. It makes it seem very futuristic.
Yeah. Okay. And then we're just going to let this kind of, I guess, not simmer because if it simmers, it'll pop. You know how like whenever you're making a very thick sauce. So you want to
And
make
it
sure that
will
you're
hurt.
stirring it. Yeah.
If it pops, it hurts. So just know, you guys, if for some reason your beans were too thin, tur- would you agree with this, Dora? I would turn the heat down very low and maybe even put a lid on it, cracked,
Yeah.
rather than standing on it. I've been burnt by stuff so many times, though.
So we don't want to like bring them up to a boil. I think you would want to stir them, just kind of keep an eye on them, but we do want it to thicken a little bit. I'm gonna put my face up here. So yeah. The thing that I love the most about these tacos is that even without the oil, they're very delicious. Sometimes tacos, especially if you're talking about like fried, like maybe like fried potato tacos and you have them without oil, you kind of feel like, like something is missing. But with these, the heartiness of the potatoes and the chorizo, really kind of make a difference in this taco.
And someone already said that color. That it is a beautiful filling color from the chiles.
So we're gonna give this a couple of minutes and I'll tell you a little bit about my book. So my book is just kind of a continuation of everything that I've been doing the last 10 years. It's all of my family recipes kind of veganized. So you will find very typical Mexican food, enchiladas, tacos, mole. But I also wanted to explore kind of other regions in Mexico that maybe people are not as familiar with. So that was something that was very exciting for me. So there's food from Yucatan, like the lower states, from Oaxaca, from central Mexico. And there's also a very special chapter called the Indigenous Kitchen. And I wanted to kind of explore that side of Mexican cuisine because it is the basis of the cuisine. And so to do that, I didn't feel like I had the knowledge myself that I couldn't be the spokesperson to something that I didn't know. And so I traveled to Mexico and I did a collaboration with 7 cocineras tradicionales. And cocineras tradicionales are indigenous cooks and they hold the knowledge of the cuisine and they dedicate themselves to teaching. Sometimes they have restaurants where they serve the food. And so we did a collaboration and that one chapter, the Indigenous Kitchen, are all recipes that the indigenous cooks contributed to the book.
And it's amazing. It's an amazing chapter, and I was so excited to read about that and even follow some of your journey on Instagram because you took some pictures while you were there. It was very cool, and we've been to Mexico just very briefly on some of our travels this year, and one of our favorite things to do is learn as much as we can about the indigenous people. So it makes me super excited to be able to try some of the food that maybe won't be readily available if I just show up. Different and all over the world, not just in Mexico. Do you know what I mean? So thank you for veganizing some things too.
Yeah. So the really cool part about that chapter is that all the dishes are dishes that are just naturally plant-based.
Oh, how
They're
cool.
Yeah, they're already naturally plant-based. When I reached out to them, like I wanted to do indigenous dishes that don't have any meat, and they're like, "Oh, cool, yeah, like we have tons of them." So it wasn't anything that we veganized. It was already they already eat it that way.
It's so surprising when you look into histories about how much stuff used to be vegan or really close to vegan.
Yeah.
But your
And
book
this,
is, again, just gorgeous and beautiful. And thank you so much for really presenting it in a way that anyone can make this.
oh, thank you, Kathy. It was a huge challenge to write it, but it was a huge challenge to make the recipes accessible to everyone. I did have to rewrite the first chapter. So I worked with recipe testers. And so I'm all confident, right? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, I can do this. And then I send the recipes out to the recipe testers. And the recipe testers are like, well, you don't know what this means. Like, what do you mean? Cut it this way. What do you mean? And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, what is happening? So I had to go back and change the way that I write so that if you don't know how to cook, you can make the recipes in this book because every single step is like described like to the tiniest detail. Like use a pan this size, cook it at this heat for this amount of time. So if you don't have a lot of experience with Mexican food, you should be able to cook with this book.
That's amazing. And I will say my experience with working with recipe testers changes how you think about explaining a recipe and writing them, right? It makes, I always say the recipe testers make the best book.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. Okay, so this is what we look like. So it basically looks like refried beans, and that's kind of like the texture that you're going for.
Okay, and I
And
love
this,
the way you're, just to point out to everybody, you're dragging your spoon through the bottom of the pan to see how quickly things cover up to determine what the thickness is.
yes, and that'll show you. So when you make this at home and you're like, and you think, oh, it's not thick enough, you can see like how my beans are practically staying in that same position. They're not, they're taking a long time to go back to the center of the pan. Okay, so we're gonna set this aside for a second. This is gonna be our filling. And now to cook them, I'm gonna use something called a comal. So a comal is a cast iron griddle, and this is a very small one, but sometimes they can sell some that are like rectangular shapes that are big. Okay, so we're gonna let that heat up, and I want to talk to you about tortillas. So it's very, very important. High quality tortillas are, depending on where you live, could be hard to find, especially corn tortillas. So a good clue, I'll show you one of my favorite brands, which is this one, El Milagro. A good clue if you have a good tortilla is the ingredients. So a lot of commercial corn tortillas, because they want to preserve them for as long as they possibly can on the shelf, have a lot of preservatives. And these, which are made here in Texas, only have stone ground non-GMO corn, water, and calcium hydroxide. And calcium hydroxide is the mineral that helps in the nixtamalization of the corn, which is a process that they use to cook the corn to make the tortillas. And so it really only has three ingredients. So when you buy tortillas, you want to make sure that it's not full of like sometimes they have cellulose and gums and things like that to make them softer. Because like I mentioned before, especially corn tortillas, when they're left out at room temperature, they harden very quickly.
And one thing I might mention, because in Durham, North Carolina, I didn't expect this, but we actually have not the bigger Hispanic market, but there's another smaller one that actually sells more meats, but they have a tortilla maker in house. So I can go in and just grab a dozen tortillas anytime. So make sure you Google around you. You might find things that surprise you. Durham, North Carolina is not like a mecca.
Yeah, that's a good. Usually, a lot of the markets, the Mexican markets, will have look for a cooler. They'll have like a cooler filled with warm tortillas. So they either make them themselves or they work with a local tortilleria, which is a tortilla maker, and they'll sell them the tortillas and you can buy them already warm. But if you are looking for tortillas, like you could either Google tortilleria or ask at your Mexican market, and they'll probably be able to tell you where to find good tortillas.
And I do have a question about your pan. So if we don't have a pan like that, could we use just any pan? Or if we have a crepe pan, would that work? Or is there a certain reason to use this particular one?
You can use, I would say, a heavy bottom pan. The one I was using before, the Teflon pan, that one, you're not supposed to use it at very high temperatures. And so we do want to do this at a higher temperature. So I would use a skillet or a griddle that you could heat at high temperatures. So I'm going to do something which will seem like counterproductive. I'm going to heat up the tortillas in the microwave. And the reason that I'm doing that is because this is a step that you would do in oil to soften, almost like you're making enchiladas. To soften the tortilla, you would put them in a little bit of a hot oil to soften them and then fill them. So I'm going to put them in the microwave with, they're wrapped in a moist paper towel, and they're going to take about a minute.
And the reason it's put in oil or that you're doing that is to soften them so they don't break. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay. Speaking as a person who has broken a lot of tortillas doing things, because I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And then smack.
Yeah. Especially corn tortillas, like you can't fold them if they're cold. Like you need to heat them up. Some commercial flour tortillas you can do it that way, but not with the corn tortillas.
And some of the flour ones that I've seen, they also have a lot of oil or preservatives or things. The softest ones seem to have the longest ingredients, like the ones you can buy at Target.
Yeah.
So what it would be your absolute favorite taco filling of all times?
That's a hard one, Kathy. Um, when I was in Mexico City, have you gone to Mexico City, Kathy?
I have not, and I really want to.
Yeah, you need to. It's
Okay,
there's a lot of vegan food, so there's a lot of already vegan restaurants, but then there's a lot of the street food is vegan. So there's a lot of like there's Mexico City is big on they call them quesadillas, but they're not they don't have cheese. You have to ask for cheese. So it's kind of like people make fun of Mexico City people. They're like, how can you have quesadillas without cheese? Um, but you can go to the street vendor and they'll have like sauteed mushrooms. They'll have like zucchini blossoms sauteed with
oh,
onion. They'll have greens, and then you can say they'll make the tortilla like right in front of you, and they'll fill they're basically tacos, but they call them quesadillas. They'll fill your tacos with the veggies, and then you can ask for salsa and like limes, and so it's a very like if you've ever gone to like a fine dining Mexican restaurant, they're like, "Oh, we grind our own corn and we like, make this from scratch." And you're like, "I could have gone to a Mexican street vendor and had the exact same thing."
that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's a great way to think about it. Are you going to do any kind of tours at all coming up? Because that seems
So
like
I,
that would be a perfect thing for you to do is lead a tour to Mexico City.
I don't have any plan right now, but that's a very good idea. Because I did work for the book, I did work with a street vendor in Mexico City, and there's two recipes on there that are hers. One is called the tlacoyo, which is like it's made out of masa, but it looks like a little football shaped gordita, and then it's filled with the most common one is filled with fava beans, and they make the
Really?
yeah, they make the fava beans in almost like they're making a falafel filling. They put it in the food processor and they just like, well, they don't put it in the food processor. They use a metate. But when I made it at home, I just put the fresh fava beans in the food processor and they add like a little bit of garlic and herbs. And that's what they fill the tlacoyo with.
That's fascinating. And I would never have associated fava beans with Mexican cuisine. So there must be a story behind that, I would think.
Fava beans are part of what we call la milpa, which is an agricultural practice where they intercrop crops. It's the intercropping of crops. So they grow corn, they grow beans, they grow squash together, and they all kind of complement each other. And so it's the kind of the basis of the indigenous Mexican cuisine, and they would use all the parts of that agricultural process. So that's where the huitlacoche, which is the corn fungus, That's where it comes from because they would eat the corn, they would eat the corn, the fungus that grew on the corn. They would eat the weeds. They're the weeds. We would call them weeds, but they call them quelites, which means wild green. And they would make tacos out of them or soup out of them and kind of use the whole ecosystem.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm Jackie's asking, are bolitos usually vegan?
Bolillos?
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Yes.
Yeah, the bolillos are usually vegan. Um, unless they're used, so bolillos are they're the bread that are made for tortas. So if they're they're usually very white, kind of they look like a baguette, but kind of smaller. So if they look like that, I would say you can be sure that they're vegan. It's just water, yeast, and salt. But if they're very brown, then I would consider that maybe they have um butter or vegetable shortening.
Okay, that's a great tip. Thank you.
Okay, so we are ready over here. I have my comal over here. I have my vegan cheese right here and my tortillas from after being 1 minute in the
Look how
microwave
soft.
are completely soft. And then I have my filling. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a spoonful of my filling, or maybe a little more. And then you can skip the vegan cheese if you don't do vegan cheese, or you could add just a little bit of vegan cheese.
And for those of you who are doing oil free, there is a vegan cheese with no oil recipe on Healthy Slow Cooking too, you could use for this. It'll melt.
And then we're going to put this on our comal. So then we're just going to repeat this with the rest of the tacos. And we want them to be crispy, so you have to watch your heat on there. You want it to be, I would say, medium heat. You got to be careful that it's not too hot because then they're going to burn instead of crisp up. So we want them to crisp up. These also work really well in the air fryer.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to watch them quite as carefully.
Yes. I would say you could do them at, let me see what the book says. Uh, 400 for 12 minutes in the air fryer.
That's awesome. I always have to reference my books too, so that made you just made me feel better as a human being. So thank you for that. Because sometimes you write so many recipes or they're from a while ago and you haven't done them. You have to check and remember what you decided.
All right, so we're gonna let that kind of crisp up a little bit. And then I'm going to you serve them with salsa. So you could I like them with salsa verde, like the green tomatillo salsa, lime juice, and sometimes on the street they do sell them with something called chiles toreados. Where in chiles toreados you blister serrano peppers. This is only if you're like spicy food. Because you're gonna blister chile serrano in a pan, and then you're gonna add onion, and then you add lime juice and soy sauce, and then you get like these like almost like if you were making like shishito peppers,
Uh huh.
but with serrano.
How interesting. And I think I've seen something like that as well. I will eat medium to medium high food. Like I actually ended up eating Thai hot by accident last month, and that was a little rough. But
Yeah.
but I was going to pull through. I ordered it. I said I like things spicy, so there you go. Right? But I think it's fun sometimes to try. Like salsa verde is one of my favorite salsas as well. I love how it's got a little bit of like bitter sour from the tomatillos, and it's just so delicious on everything. It makes everything feel so fresh to me.
I feel it's very good with very strong flavors. So like if you have like here it complements you have this very strong flavor of the chorizo. So if you used a more like mild tomato salsa, like that would get lost in the flavor of the chorizo. So in this case, the salsa verde is going to act as a contrast to that flavor, and it'll kind of makes a new combination. You know, the kind of thing that like awakens your taste buds like, oh my goodness, what is this?
Right, because the chorizo is usually like a little on the darker, heavier end of things, and then salsa verde is kind of bright and citrusy. I love that. Jackie's saying a local restaurant made me vegan tamales, but I'm sure they had lots of oil. Do you have a tamale recipe in your book?
I have a whole chapter on tamales. I think tamales I would say are my specialty. And so to make them without oil, I have a very neat trick. So you instead of using oil or coconut oil or any type of fat, you want to use unsweetened pumpkin puree. And so that'll give the masa the like humidity that it needs, like the moisture that it needs, so they won't be dry. They are going to be denser than tamales made with fat, but they maintain their shape, they're delicious, and they're not, they're still tender. They're not, because when you think about it, you're like, oh, they're going to end up without fat, they're going to be super dry. But this is not the case at all. And then the masa does come out a tad bit sweet because of the pumpkin puree. But if you're making a savory tamal and you're making a filling with like the chorizo, which has very smart, like a strong chile flavor, you're not even going to taste it.
Oh, that's great. Um, let's see. Hey, Apple, it's good to see you. The filling is not in the notes, but you can get it in Dora's book, which I think you need. And I did one tamale recipe, and I don't think you know Sandra Gutierrez. She is not a vegan creator, but she has a Latin American food like exhibit for a while at the Smithsonian. So she is a Latin American food expert from Guatemala. I'll come up for this one. And so when I was doing them, I brought them to her, and I was using pumpkin as well. And one thing that she told me, and you probably already do this as well, was to put them in the KitchenAid and let them mix for a period of time. She found that help them get lighter. Is that what you do, or do you have a different trick?
Yes, that's what I do. Traditionally that used to be done by hand. They would get like huge clay pots and then the cook would like whip, 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 whip. You had to have really strong arms. Um, but now you can use your KitchenAid, your stand mixer, and what I do is I whip the pumpkin puree first with the baking powder and the salt. And then I add the masarina and the broth gradually. And then you want to let it whip or beat for about 5 to 6 minutes. And that'll get all that air into the masa. And that really helps the texture.
Oh, that's awesome. And one day, hopefully, either you can come here, and I would love for you to meet Sandra. She's so sweet.
I don't know her personally, but I do know of her.
Okay, she lives in Cary, so she actually lives
Oh,
in my
okay.
area of the world. So I've gone to her house, and we've made all different kinds of Latin American food, which has been super awesome for me. But still, while she makes everything vegan for me when I'm there, I still encourage everybody to get Dora's book and to get your book because it breaks everything so easy and everything's in step by step. So trying new to you ingredients really isn't very difficult. And you'll be surprised at sourcing so much of this. Really, it's fantastic what's available to us in this day and age.
Yeah, and I know Sandra's books have a lot of them have illustration of like the steps and like for my book I did have like what I felt the most complicated recipes they have pictures. So like step by step pictures, especially when you're talking about like making the masa shapes.
Yeah, especially since you're introducing to some lesser known shapes to us too. Like, right? I feel like I'm experimentative, but since I haven't been all over Mexico like you, it's fascinating. It's like taking an armchair vacation, just looking in your book and just getting to see all different kinds of food. And Karen was saying, just tuned in, what kind of pumpkin filling? Never. So whenever you hear on this channel pumpkin puree, it will never be filling. You'll hear pumpkin filling. Like I don't you because that usually has pumpkin pie spices and different things like that. Pumpkin puree is just plain pumpkin and or possibly other winter squash.
Yes, I do buy it. If I, especially in the fall, I might make my own pumpkin puree, but you can buy that in a can as well. You just have to make sure that it says it's unsweetened and that it doesn't have any spices.
Because dessert tamales wouldn't be the worst thing to happen in the world, but you wouldn't want to do it by accident.
There are dessert tamales in the book as well. So my favorite is the apple. It's almost like an apple pie tamal, which is very
Ooh.
good. All right, I want to show you.
Those are so beautiful.
So you can see, I don't know if you can hear,
Yeah, you can
they're
hear it.
crispy on the outside and you can see the brown spots. So they're not, like this is even crispier. You don't want them burnt, but you do want them crispy. And you can, there's no oil on here at all. And so I'm just gonna move them over to my plate. Woo! Hot.
And now I need tacos for lunch. It's all your fault.
Okay, move this out of the way. And so I have my tacos right here, my salsa verde, and I do have some lime. This might not be for everybody, but in Mexico we love our lime. And so you would just kind of want to open this up right here.
Ooh, that was the perfect like puff of steam. I don't know if you could see it on your side, but we could see it through the video.
And you add your salsa verde and a little bit of lime. And that's it. You got your crispy chorizo potato bean tacos, tacos envenenados.
Those look amazing. Leanne says they look amazing, and she has your vegan tamales cookbook, as do I,
Yes.
which is a great book as well. Thank you so much, and thanks for the story. I love the poison taco story. I knew there must be something behind there,
Yeah.
but I can't think of anything tastier and healthier than beans, potato, and homemade vegan chorizo. Do you have anything else you want to say about the book, or maybe a couple of recipes you want people to make sure to try?
Yes. I'm going to grab the book really quick so
Okay,
everybody knows what it looks like.
I'll put you
So,
on so it can be bigger.
so this is my cookbook. It's called Comida Casera, which means home cooking. So it has a lot of what people would consider traditional Mexican home cooking. Everything from, there's a chapter on tamales, there's a chapter on moles. So the kind of like the base of the book, it's a journey through typical Mexican food landmarks. So you start at the indigenous table, and then you go to the market to find mole. Then you go to Comida Casera, which is home cooking. Then you go to La Tamaleria, which is a store where you buy tamales, and that's the chapter all on tamales. There's street food. So every kind of like important culinary landmark in Mexico is like the journey through this book, ending with La Paleteria, which is where you would find paletas, which are popsicles, ice cream, and La Panaderia, which are sweetbreads. So a lot, I would say over 90% of the recipes have an oil-free variation in the notes because I also follow Dr. McDougall, and so it was very important to me to make this as accessible as possible for everyone. This is one of my favorite recipes, and these are very similar to these, but these are crispy carrot tacos.
Ooh.
Crispy carrot tacos, and then you can't really tell on the plate, but it has like a tomato sauce at the bottom. But here at the end of the recipe, it'll say variations, and then it'll say oil-free and it'll give you the instructions on how to make it oil free. And this was tested, the oil free versions were tested by the recipe testers, so we know they work.
That is amazing because one of the things, too, even in the vegan world, a lot of times it can be hard for people to get those tested oil free options. So, thank you so much for that. Yeah, and Leanne is saying, what a beautiful book. Jackie follows Dora on Instagram and YouTube. And if you're not already following her, look below in the description and start following her on Instagram and YouTube. And there's a link to go to Amazon to get the book so you can have it in your hot little hands in a couple of days. And even Fergus says you should buy the book. So I really like that. I don't tell you guys, you know this, I don't tell you guys to buy a lot of books all the time. But I think this is a really, really wonderful one to have in your library.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Kathy.
Oh, of course. And Apple says my public library has this book. I've placed a hold. That's great. Apple's in Vancouver, and
Oh,
I'm a
that's
big
great.
library person too. So, one thing I used to send out to my newsletter when one of my traditionally published books would come out would be place a request in your library. So if you're not in a position to go get the book today, you certainly can request it from your library, and that still helps. That helps support Dora, and then even more people in your community can learn about new and delicious vegan food. So it's a win for everyone.
Yes. And then I am doing a book tour. So I will
Oh,
be in Dallas this weekend, and then first week of June, I'm going to be in California. So I'm doing San Diego, LA, and Orange County. And then at the end of the month, at the end of June, I will be in New York.
well, that sounds like a busy and fun summer.
Yeah.
Are you visiting people you know along the way or doing some
Yes.
cooking?
I used to live in California, so I do know a lot of people in California, so that'll be good. But I am taking the kids, so it'll be a fun little vacation.
Oh, good. Are you going to get to take them to, or they've probably already been to Disneyland and things like that?
We're going to Legoland.
Oh, okay. That sounds exciting for them.
Yeah.
That also would be exciting for Cheryl, my wife. It would be less exciting for me. And do you have anything super fun planned for you? Like a treat for
So
you for doing all this?
I think that's probably going to be my New York trip because I'm going to do it by myself. So that's going to be like my nice weekend away from the kids.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you'll have to take yourself out to a couple of nice dinners or something as well. Karen wants to know, where will we see these dates of your book tour? She would love to see you in LA.
They're already on my Instagram page, and that's where I've been publishing where the events will be and also my newsletter. If you go on my site and sign up for my newsletter, I'm also sending updates through there.
Okay, that's wonderful. And Jill said she'd love to see you in San Diego. Um, Oh, and here's a question before we wrap up. Jackie says, and Jackie lives in Texas, so we have a lot of people watching in Texas that are familiar with some Mexican food and lots of Tex-Mex food. And says, I only had mole once. It was very dark and I didn't love it. Is there one you would suggest that wasn't so bitter?
So there are many, many different types of mole. There's a mole chapter in the book. So the most common one is mole poblano, which is a little bitter, but it's mostly sweet and spicy. That's the one that most people have tried. Mole negro, I would stay away from because mole negro, which means black mole, is very bitter compared to the other types of moles. But there's a recipe in the book. It's called pipián, and it's a very easy mole to made with almonds. And then, so it's like an almond-based sauce with chiles. It's an almond mole, and I serve it with ayacote beans, which are these like huge
Oh,
purple beans.
I love
And
those.
yeah, I know. Squash, chayote, all in the sauce, and then you eat it with tortilla. So anything, if you're looking for like a more mild, there's a pipián rojo, which is the one with the almonds, and then there's pipián verde, and pipián verde is made with pumpkin seeds. And that one is a more like herbish. It has like cilantro and epazote, pumpkin seeds, jalapeno. It's more like an herbal kind of mole.
Oh, wow. Those sound all delicious. Like that's the one thing I'm always looking for if I am in Mexico or even at a place that has a mole sauce that's vegan. I'm in it. I'm gonna try it. So now the one thing is, Leanne hopes that you're stopping in Atlanta, but I don't think you're doing East Coast as much except for New York at the moment. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I've got so far. I don't know, Kathy, what your experience was with your publishers, but right now publishers aren't investing that much in PR and they're kind of leaving the PR to the authors. So this is what my budget is allowing, but I am hoping that as time progresses that I can visit more places.
Oh, that sounds great. And maybe one thing, if you're in a place and you wish Dora would come, maybe you can chat with her and see how maybe you could support that, or if there's something, an organization that, like a veg fest or a vegan group that might be able to partner with Dora to do that.
I am doing a partnership here at my local library. So that would also be a good option if you have like a big central library in your city. You might be able to maybe like reach out to them and be like, hey, we want to bring her, and they might have a small budget to kind of help me with my travel expenses or something like that. So there's a lot of options.
Yeah, but always, and this is not only with Dora, but all of your favorite vegan authors, you can always reach out, because even if Dora or I or someone else has to say no, that doesn't quite, work for me, it means the world that you reached out and you're actually trying. So that's a way you can put good out in the world. So thank you.
Yes.
Right? And the book, a couple of people have bought the books. Some of the books are in some carts, which is exactly what we like. And Marilyn was saying she was in Mexico and had a mole, and she also hasn't tried it since. Marilyn lives in New Orleans, and she's like a dehydrator queen. Like she has a giant garden. She does all this amazing stuff. And so Jackie was saying, likely we both had the very dark and bitter one. And I suspect so, because I know Marilyn's range of flavors that she eats. So I'm
Hmm.
I'm surprised. Maybe I haven't had the most bitter one yet. Maybe that's still some place for me to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for showing us yummy food, writing this book, and making everything so accessible and including oil free in it. I know I've said it before, but I mean, that's a big deal. There aren't a lot of really delicious, wonderful books out there. So thank you for being one of them. And thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Kathy.
All right, guys. Well, I will be on Chef AJ tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time demoing the Nama M milk maker. Do you have a milk maker? Haven't asked. I have
No,
like
I don't.
I have like all of them. But
No.
I love I make soy milk and all that. But one thing actually you might like, so the Nama makes, it's like a juicer, but it's a milk maker. So it makes the pulp very dry. I've been using blanched almonds to make almond milk. And I've actually been using that almond pulp and making queso fresca with a little
Oh,
lactic
yeah,
acid,
smart. Yeah.
and it looks just the same, which is crazy. So I don't know. It's expensive, but I teach Chef AJ how to use most of her appliances now. She
Yeah.
doesn't like to read the directions, but that's really easy. Okay. Here's one more question. Mona says, "Do you use mostly white corn tortillas?"
So the ones that are usually found at the store are white corn tortillas. So or you might find blue, but if I'm gonna buy that, I usually buy the brand that I just show you, which uses white corn. But there's a very good company called Macienda that sells masarina, which is the corn flour, and they sell yellow, white, and blue and pink.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's
I
all
don't
made.
have the pink.
Yeah, the pink is made with pink corn, and that's actually one of my favorites because the flavor is very different from the other corns. But that's a really good option if you want to make your own tortillas and want to experiment with different types of corn.
Oh, that's great. And I love that. I always like to try something new too, to just kind of see. And when I was talking with Sandra, she's always trying to make me feel better. So like I am the worst tortilla maker that has ever tortillaed. And she's like, no, no, you make South American tortillas. So evidently they get thicker as they
Yeah.
go lower. And I'm like, thanks for that helpful thought. And then Leanne said Atlanta History Center often hosts authors, even cookbook authors. Think I'll plant a seed. That would be great. Oh, and Betsy's buying the book and getting one as a gift. That's awesome. It's
Oh,
never too
thank
early
you.
to mark off your Christmas list. Okay. And Jackie has a tortilla press and she wants the,
Molcajete.
thank you. I will just make motions of things. And then if I do like the pan, right? This is how I get around in different countries too. Well, again, thank you so much. And thanks for all the information. And you're welcome back here anytime you want to do some cooking. So just let me know. And you
Oh,
always have a place here.
thank you so much, Kathy.
All right, guys, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And Dora, have a beautiful week.